My sister sent me a message saying, "Don't come to mom's retirement party. She doesn't want you there," and dad liked the message. I just replied, "Cool. I'll stop paying for the venue." Then, the text came through while I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down to see my sister Ashley's name on the screen. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks, which wasn't unusual anymore. Our relationship had grown distant over the years, though I could never pinpoint exactly when the shift happened. "Don't come to mom's retirement party. She doesn't want you there." I stared at the words, reading them twice to make sure I understood correctly. Below the message, I saw that my father had liked it. Dad rarely used social media features, so the fact that he deliberately tapped that little heart icon felt like a punch to the gut. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. 1,000 responses flooded my mind, each one angrier than the last. But then I remembered something crucial. 3 months ago, when Mom had casually mentioned her upcoming retirement celebration, I'd volunteered to help. She'd seemed distracted, barely acknowledging my offer. 2 weeks later, she called asking if I knew any good venues in the downtown area. Without thinking twice, I'd not only found the perfect place, the Riverside Pavilion, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, but I'd also put down the deposit using my credit card. The total cost was nearly $8,000. I typed out my response with steady hands, "Cool. I'll stop paying for the venue." The 3 dots indicating Ashley was typing appeared immediately, then disappeared. Then appeared again. I could practically feel her panic through the screen. My phone rang within 60 seconds. Ashley's face appeared on my screen, and I let it ring 4 times before answering. "You can't be serious," she said, skipping any greeting. "You're really going to cancel Mom's party out of spite?" "I'm not canceling anything out of spite," I replied calmly, closing my laptop and leaning back in my office chair. "You told me I'm not welcome. Why would I continue paying for an event I'm not invited to attend? That doesn't make any sense." "Jenna, come on. Don't be like this." "Be like what, exactly? You sent me a message telling me Mom doesn't want me there. Dad confirmed it by liking your text. I'm simply respecting their wishes and withdrawing my financial contribution. Seems pretty straightforward to me." Ashley's voice took on that wheedling tone she'd perfected since childhood. "You know how Mom gets. She's been stressed about the retirement, and she made some comment about how you always make everything about yourself. I was just trying to keep the peace. By uninviting me to a party I'm funding?" I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "How generous of you. Look, I'll talk to her. Just don't cancel the venue yet. Please." I hung up without answering. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and emails, but my mind kept circling back to that text message. This wasn't the first time I'd been made to feel like an outsider in my own family. Growing up, Ashley had always been the favorite. She was 3 years younger, blessed with Mom's delicate features and Dad's easy charm. I'd inherited Dad's height and Mom's analytical mind, which somehow translated into being difficult and too serious. When Ashley married her college boyfriend Travis in a lavish ceremony 5 years ago, I'd contributed $10,000 toward the wedding costs. Mom had cried tears of joy throughout the entire reception. 2 years later, when I'd gotten engaged to my partner Kevin, Mom's response had been lukewarm at best. She'd made passive-aggressive comments about the venue being too modern, the guest list being too small, and our decision to write our own vows being too unconventional. We postponed the wedding twice due to work commitments, and eventually, Kevin and I had decided to elope to Hawaii instead. Mom hadn't spoken to me for 2 months afterward. That evening, I sat down with Kevin in our living room and told him everything. He listened quietly, his expression growing darker as I recounted the day's events. "So what are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. "I'm going to cancel the venue reservation." "Are you sure? Your mom will never forgive you." I met his eyes. "She's already made it clear I'm not part of this celebration. Why should I bankrupt myself for people who don't want me there?" Kevin reached for my hand. "I support whatever you decide. But think it through first. This might burn bridges you can't rebuild." He was right, of course. Kevin was always the rational one in our relationship, the person who thought 3 steps ahead while I charged forward on emotion. But this time, I'd already made up my mind. The next morning, I called the Riverside Pavilion and explained that I needed to cancel the reservation. The woman on the phone was sympathetic but firm. According to their policy, I could get a 50% refund if I canceled more than 45 days before the event. The party was scheduled for exactly 62 days away. "I understand," I said. "Please proceed with the cancellation." After hanging up, I texted Ashley, "Venue canceled. You have 62 days to find a new location. Good luck." My phone exploded with messages within minutes. Ashley sent a string of texts calling me selfish, immature, and vindictive. Mom called 4 times, but I sent each call to voicemail. Dad sent a single text, very disappointed in you. I turned off my phone and went to work. The following week was quieter than I expected. No one from my family reached out, and I threw myself into a major project at the marketing firm where I worked as a senior director. My colleague Tiffany noticed my distraction during a brainstorming session and pulled me aside afterward. You okay? You seem off. I gave her the abbreviated version of events. Tiffany's eyes widened progressively as I spoke. Wait, they uninvited you to a party you were paying for? And they're mad that you canceled it? She shook her head in disbelief. That's absolutely wild. I keep wondering if I did the right thing, I admitted. Are you kidding? You did the only thing that made sense. They can't have it both ways, Jenna. Either you're family or you're not. Either you're welcome at the celebration or you're not. They don't get to exclude you and still expect your money. Her words settled something in my chest that had been tight since Ashley's original text. 3 weeks after I canceled the venue, my Aunt Lorraine called. She was Mom's older sister, and we'd always had a friendly but distant relationship. She lived 2 states away, and we maybe saw each other once a year at most. I need to tell you something, she said after we exchanged pleasantries. Your mother called me last week asking if I could loan her $6,000 for a party venue. She said you'd backed out of paying for her retirement celebration. That's not exactly what happened. I figured as much. Your mother has a way of rewriting history to suit her narrative. So I asked her point blank, did you uninvite Jenna to her own event? And do you know what she said? What? She said, well, she was making everything so complicated with her opinions about the catering and decorations. It was easier to plan without her input. Jenna, she didn't even deny that she excluded you. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar ache behind my ribs. Aunt Lorraine continued, I told her I wouldn't give her a penny. I also told her that if she didn't want you at the party, she should have never accepted your money in the first place. She hung up on me. I'm sorry you got dragged into this. Don't apologize. Someone needs to tell your mother the truth, and it's clearly not going to be your father or Ashley. Those two enable her worst behavior. After we hung up, I felt a strange mixture of validation and sadness. At least someone in my family saw the situation clearly, even if she lived 300 miles away. I decided to share the conversation with Kevin that evening. He was in the kitchen making his specialty pasta dish when I walked in and leaned against the counter. Aunt Lorraine called, I said. He glanced up from chopping garlic. How'd that go? She refused to loan Mom money for the venue. Told her she was wrong for excluding me after I'd already paid. Kevin set down the knife and turned to face me fully. How do you feel about that? Relieved, I think. Like I'm not crazy for being upset. Everyone else has been acting like I'm the villain here for canceling, but Lorraine gets it. She understands that you can't treat people however you want and still expect their generosity. Your family has a funny way of showing appreciation, Kevin said, returning to his cooking. Remember when you helped your dad with his taxes for 3 years straight, and he never once said thank you? I did remember. Dad had struggled with the new tax software after his longtime accountant retired, and I'd spend hours each April walking him through the process via video calls. The 3rd year, I'd simply done them for him remotely. His only comment had been that I'd claimed a deduction he wasn't sure about, even though I'd triple-checked with a tax professional friend. They take you for granted, Kevin continued, his voice gentle but firm. They always have. And the worst part is they don't even realize they're doing it. Maybe I let them, I admitted. Maybe I set the precedent by always being available, always helping, never setting boundaries. That's not an excuse for them to exploit your kindness. He was right, but the realization stung anyway. How many times had I rearranged my schedule to accommodate Ashley's requests? How many family obligations had I prioritized over my own needs? I'd been so busy trying to earn their approval that I'd never stopped to question whether their treatment of me was acceptable. The following week, something unexpected happened. I received a Facebook friend request from Danielle, one of Mom's longtime teaching colleagues. We'd met several times at school functions when I was younger, but we weren't close. Curious, I accepted. Within an hour, she'd sent me a private message, Hi Jenna. I heard through the grapevine about your mom's party situation. I wanted to reach out because I think there's something you should know. Your mom has been telling everyone that you canceled the venue in a fit of anger because she didn't want your help planning. She's making it sound like you threw a tantrum and left her scrambling. I know that can't be the whole story, and I thought you deserved to know what she's been saying. My hands trembled as I read the message twice. Mom was actively rewriting the narrative, painting me as unstable and vindictive to her social circle. These were people who'd known me since childhood, watching me grow up at school events and teacher conferences. Now they were hearing a completely distorted version of events. I typed back, thank you for telling me. The truth is that my sister sent me a message saying I wasn't invited to the party, and my dad liked the message confirming it. I was the one who'd booked and paid for the venue. When they uninvited me, I simply withdrew my financial support. I wasn't trying to ruin anything, I was just respecting their wish for me not to be involved. Danielle responded immediately, I figured it was something like that. Your mom has always had a complicated relationship with accountability. I've worked with her for 15 years, and I love her dearly, but she struggles to admit when she's wrong. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. The exchange left me furious. It was one thing for mom to be upset privately, it was another entirely for her to spread lies about me to her friends and colleagues. I wanted to call her immediately and demand she set the record straight, but Kevin talked me down from that impulse. If you confront her now, she'll just get defensive and double down, he reasoned. Let her dig her own hole. The truth is a way of coming out eventually. But the anger simmered inside me for days. I found myself distracted at work, snapping at colleagues over minor issues, losing sleep as I mentally rehearsed confrontations I'd never actually have. Tiffany noticed during a Thursday morning meeting when I barely contributed to a discussion about a major client pitch. Okay, what's going on? She asked when we were alone in the conference room afterward. You've been checked out all week. I told her about Danielle's message and mom's lies. Tiffany's expression shifted from concern to outrage. Are you serious? She's actually slandering you to her friends? She paced the length of the room. Jenna, you can't let that stand. Those people need to know the truth. But how do I correct it without looking petty or vindictive myself? If I start messaging mom's friends to give my side of the story, it'll look like I'm trying to turn people against her. Tiffany considered this. What if you didn't have to be the one to tell them? What if the facts spoke for themselves? What do you mean? Do you still have the text from Ashley? The one where she uninvited you? I nodded slowly, beginning to understand where she was going. And do you have proof that you paid for the original venue? I have the credit card statement and the deposit confirmation email. Then you have documentation. You don't need to argue with your mom or convince anyone of anything. If people ask you directly what happened, you can show them the receipts, literally. Let them draw their own conclusions. It felt calculated and cold, but also completely fair. I wasn't spreading rumors or exaggerating. I was simply prepared to defend myself with facts if mom's lies reached me again. That weekend, I got a call from my cousin Bryce, Ashley's age, who I'd always gotten along with reasonably well. We chatted about his new job for a few minutes before he broached the real reason for his call. So I heard about the drama with Aunt Patricia's retirement party, he said, using mom's first name. My mom told me you bailed on helping because you were too busy with work. That's not what happened, I said evenly. Did your mom mention that Ashley uninvited me to the party I'd already paid for? Silence on the other end of the line. She uninvited you? Bryce finally said. To your own event? Yes. She sent me a text saying mom didn't want me there, and dad liked the message. So I canceled my financial contribution. I still offered to let them keep half the deposit, but they never asked. Holy. I had no idea. Mom made it sound like you were being difficult about decorations or something and just pulled your support to make a point. Did she? My voice was flat. Bryce, can I send you something? Sure. I forwarded him the screenshot of Ashley's original text message, complete with dad's like. Then I sent him the credit card statement showing the venue deposit. Wow, he said after a moment. This is completely different from what I heard. I'm sorry, Jenna. That's really messed up. After we hung up, I felt both justified and exhausted. How many other relatives had heard twisted versions of the story? How much energy would I have to spend correcting the record? About a week had passed since the cancellation. The party was now roughly 54 days away, and I tried to put it out of my mind. I assumed my family had either found a new venue or canceled the celebration entirely. Either way, it was no longer my concern. Kevin and I made plans for a weekend getaway during that same time frame, booking a cabin in the mountains where we could hike and disconnect from everything. Then my phone rang at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. It was Ashley, and this time I answered. I need you to listen to me, she said without preamble. Her voice sounded strained, exhausted. Mom had a breakdown today. She's been calling every venue within 50 miles, and everything is either booked or way out of her budget. She can't afford the kind of place you reserved. Dad's retirement account took a hit last year, and they're being careful with money. She won't admit it, but I think she's scared. I should have felt satisfaction at this admission. Part of me did. But another part felt something uncomfortably close to guilt. Continue, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She called me crying this afternoon. Actually crying, Jenna. You know Mom never cries. She said she felt like a failure, like she'd worked her entire adult life and couldn't even afford to celebrate it properly. She kept saying all her colleagues would think she was pathetic. And whose fault is that, Ashley? Who decided I wasn't welcome at the event I was funding? I know. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just trying to give you the full picture. Travis and I have been fighting about this for days. He thinks I created this whole mess by getting involved when I should have stayed out of it. Travis is right. Ashley let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Yeah, he usually is. Look, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. But Mom's talking about canceling the whole party now. She's humiliated. Dad's barely speaking to her because he thinks this is all her fault for being difficult with you. Our whole family is falling apart over a retirement party. I walk to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. What do you want from me, Ashley? Honestly? I don't know. Maybe I just needed to tell someone how bad it's gotten. How much I hate being in the middle of this. How tired I am of trying to manage everyone's emotions. There was something raw in her voice that I recognized. We'd both grown up in the same household, both learned to navigate Mom's moods and Dad's silent disapproval. But Ashley had chosen a different strategy. She'd become the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed things over, while I'd become increasingly distant. You don't have to be in the middle, I told her. You chose to put yourself there when you sent me that text instead of telling Mom to handle her own relationships. You're right. God, you're so right, and I hate it. She paused. Jenna, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you even want to fix this? Or are you done with all of us? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on my anger and hurt that I hadn't really considered what I wanted beyond making my point. I don't know, I admitted. A few weeks ago, I would have said I was done. But now, I don't know. I miss having a sister. I don't miss the drama, but I miss you. The version of you that isn't constantly trying to manage Mom's feelings. I miss you too, Ashley said quietly. I miss when we were close. Before I got married and you got engaged and everything got so complicated. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us processing. Scared of what? Of retiring without any fanfare. Of feeling like her 35 years of teaching didn't matter. Of getting older and being forgotten. Something in Ashley's tone made me pause. She sounded genuine for the first time in months, stripped of her usual defensiveness. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I messed up. I should never have sent you that text. Mom was having a bad day, venting about wedding planning stress. Did I mention Travis and I are renewing our vows? And she made some offhand comment about how you always take over planning and make everything about your taste instead of what she wants. I took that and ran with it, thinking I was helping. I wasn't thinking about the venue or your feelings. I was just trying to make Mom happy, which is what I always do. What I've always done. The admission hung between us. I heard her sigh, long and weary. I'm tired, Jenna. I'm tired of being the mediator. I'm tired of trying to manage Mom's moods and Dad's silence and your hurt feelings and my own marriage and everything else. But I'm most tired of the fact that we don't act like sisters anymore. We act like strangers who share DNA. My throat tightened. You uninvited me to my own event, Ashley. You made me feel like I don't belong in this family. I know. And I'm sorry. Truly, genuinely sorry. I can't take it back, but I'm asking you now, is there any way to fix this? I walked to the window of our apartment, looking out at the city lights. Kevin appeared in the doorway, a question in his eyes, and I gave him a small shake of my head to indicate I was okay. What does Mom want? I asked Ashley. Honestly? I think she wants to pretend none of this happened. She wants her party at a nice venue with all her friends and family there, and she wants to not acknowledge that she hurt you or that there are any problems in this family whatsoever. Well, that's not going to happen. I know. But maybe we can find some middle ground? I'm not asking you to pay for the venue again. Travis and I talked about it, and we're going to cover half the cost of a new location. We found a place called the Garden Terrace that has availability and costs about $4,000 total. We can manage $2,000, but we need help with the rest. And you want me to contribute? I want you to come to the party. If you're willing to help financially, that would be amazing. But honestly, I just want my sister there. I want us to start fixing whatever's broken between all of us, even if it takes years. And you want me to contribute? I want you to come to the party. If you're willing to help financially, that would be amazing. But honestly, I just want my sister there. I want us to start fixing whatever's broken between all of us, even if it takes years. Before I could respond, she continued, I talked to Travis about everything. About how I've been enabling Mom for years, about how I threw you under the bus, about all of it. He suggested we go to family therapy together, you, me, Mom, and Dad. I know that sounds extreme, but maybe we need someone objective to help us communicate better. Mom would never agree to therapy, I said automatically. I know. But I had to mention it because Travis made a good point. If we keep doing what we've always done, nothing will change. We'll have this party, everyone will pretend everything's fine, and then the next family event will bring up all the same issues. She was right, and I knew it. Our family's pattern was to sweep conflict under the rug, paste on smiles, and act like nothing had happened. Then the resentment would build until the next explosion. I need time to think about this, I told her. About all of it. The party, the money, whether I even want to keep trying with this family. That's fair, Ashley said. Take all the time you need. The party's still about 5 weeks away, so there's a little breathing room. I'm sorry, Jenna. For everything. I should have been a better sister. After hanging up, I found Kevin in his home office, working late on a presentation. I collapsed into the chair across from his desk and recounted the entire conversation. So what's your gut telling you? He asked, closing his laptop to give me his full attention. My gut is confused. Part of me wants to help because I can see Ashley's trying to change. But part of me is still angry that it took Mom having a breakdown for anyone to care about my feelings. Kevin nodded thoughtfully. Can I play devil's advocate for a minute? Go ahead. What if you helped, but on completely different terms? Not as the invisible piggy bank, but as an equal participant who gets a voice in decisions. You contribute financially if you want to, but you also get acknowledged publicly for that contribution. You attend the party as a valued guest, not someone who has to earn the right to be there. You're saying I should negotiate boundaries before agreeing to anything. Exactly. Your family has gotten used to taking what you offer without giving much back. Change that dynamic. Make your participation conditional on actual respect, not just lip service. The idea was appealing but also terrifying. Setting boundaries with my family had never ended well in the past. Mom would get hurt and withdrawn, Dad would act like I was being unreasonable, and I'd end up feeling guilty for having needs. But maybe that was the pattern that needed to break. Over the next few days, I drafted a list of conditions. It felt clinical and cold, but Kevin encouraged me to be specific rather than hoping people would just do better without clear expectations. My conditions were a direct, genuine apology from Mom, in person or via phone, not through text or a third party, public acknowledgement of the party that I contributed to making the event possible. Kevin and I would be treated as equal guests, not afterthoughts. No lies or distorted narratives about what happened with the venue cancellation. Going forward, family decisions that involved me would include my input, not just my money. I sent the list to Ashley in an email, keeping the tone professional rather than emotional. Her response came within an hour. These are completely reasonable. I'll talk to Mom. Give me a few days. Those few days stretched into nearly 2 weeks. During that time, I heard nothing from my parents directly, though Ashley sent periodic updates, still working on Mom. She's resistant, but I think she's coming around. Dad says he understands your position. I tried not to obsess over it, throwing myself into work and spending evenings planning our mountain getaway with Kevin. We decided to go regardless of whether the party happened, treating ourselves to a true vacation away from family drama. The party was now less than 3 weeks away, and I figured if I hadn't heard anything definitive soon, the decision would be made for me. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with Mom's number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello? Jenna. Mom's voice was tight, controlled. Ashley said you wanted to talk to me. She told you about my conditions? She did. A pause. I don't agree with calling them conditions like this is some kind of business negotiation. We're family. I felt my shoulders tense. Here we go, I thought. The deflection, the guilt trip, the refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing. Family doesn't invite family to events they're paying for, I said quietly. Family doesn't spread lies about why plans changed. Family doesn't take and take without ever acknowledging what they're receiving. I never spread lies, Mom. I know you told your colleagues I canceled the venue in a fit of anger. Danielle reached out to me. So did cousin Bryce. I know exactly what you've been saying, and it's not true. Silence stretched between us. I waited, refusing to fill the uncomfortable space. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice smaller. I was embarrassed. All those people expecting this lovely celebration, and suddenly I couldn't afford it. I didn't know how to explain what happened without admitting that we. She trailed off. Without admitting that you pushed me away and regretted it when there were consequences? Yes, she whispered. It was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever heard from my mother. I thought about Mom's face, how she looked when I told her I was engaged to Kevin. The disappointment barely concealed behind her congratulations. I thought about Dad's silence whenever Mom criticized me, how he'd become an expert at saying nothing. I thought about all the family dinners where I'd felt like a visitor in my own history. But I also thought about Ashley at 16, sneaking into my room after a fight with our parents, asking me what she should do. I thought about teaching her to drive, and how we'd laughed so hard we had to pull over. I thought about the way family isn't just about the hurt we cause each other, but also about whether we're willing to try again despite it. I'll contribute $1,000, I said finally. Not for Mom. For you because you apologized and that took courage. But I have conditions. Okay. What are they? First, Mom needs to apologize to me directly. Not through you, not through Dad. She needs to call me and acknowledge what happened. Second, I'm bringing Kevin to the party, and I expect both of you to be treated with respect. Third, I'm not pretending everything's fine. If people ask why there was a venue change, I'm telling them the truth. Ashley was quiet for a long moment. I'll talk to Mom about the apology. I can't guarantee she'll do it, but I'll try. And yes to the other two conditions. They're more than fair. Then we have a deal. We said goodbye, and I sat down heavily on the couch next to Kevin. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You're a better person than I am, he said. I'm not doing it to be good. I'm doing it because holding on to this anger is exhausting, and I want to at least try to move forward. Even if it doesn't work out, at least I'll know I tried. Mom called 2 days later. The conversation was stilted and uncomfortable. Her apology came out in fits and starts, mixed with justifications and explanations that undermined the words themselves. But she did apologize, and I accepted it, even though I knew we both understood it wasn't enough to fix everything that was broken. I hope you'll come to the party, she said at the end of the call. It would mean a lot to me. I'll be there, I told her. The garden terrace was smaller than the riverside pavilion, with less impressive views, but it had a warmth that the other venue had lacked. Ashley had done a good job decorating with photographs of Mom throughout her teaching career, testimonials from former students, and centerpieces featuring books, Mom's greatest passion. The garden terrace was smaller than the riverside pavilion, with less impressive views, but it had a warmth that the other venue had lacked. Ashley had done a good job decorating with photographs of Mom throughout her teaching career, testimonials from former students, and centerpieces featuring books, Mom's greatest passion. When we pulled into the parking lot, I noticed the place was already filling up with guests. My stomach knotted with anxiety despite all the preparations and agreements we'd made. Ready? Kevin asked, squeezing my hand. As I'll ever be. Walking through the entrance, I immediately spotted several of Mom's teaching colleagues clustered near the bar. A few of them glanced my way, and I wondered which ones had heard the false narrative about me. Danielle caught my eye from across the room and gave me a warm smile and small wave, which helped settle my nerves slightly. Ashley appeared within minutes, looking genuinely happy to see me. She'd lost weight since I'd last seen her in person, and there were tired circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. You came, she said, pulling me into a hug that lasted longer than our usual obligatory embraces. I said I would. I know, but part of me worried you'd change your mind. She stepped back, including Kevin in her smile. Thank you both for being here. Mom's in the back room touching up her makeup. She's nervous. Nervous about the party or nervous about seeing me? Both, probably. But she's committed to doing this right. I made sure of it. Travis joined us, greeting Kevin with the easy camaraderie they developed over the years. The four of us made small talk for a few minutes before Dad approached. He looked older than I remembered, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. Jenna, he said, nodding formally. Then, making visible effort, thank you for coming. And for your help with the venue. It wasn't effusive, but coming from Dad, it was significant. He'd actually acknowledged my contribution without prompting. You're welcome. The awkwardness hung between us for a moment before Travis smoothly redirected conversation to a recent baseball game, giving everyone an out from the tension. I arrived with Kevin, both of us dressed appropriately for the semi-formal event. Mom greeted us at the entrance, and there was an awkward moment where neither of us knew quite how to navigate the hello. Eventually, she pulled me into a brief hug that felt obligatory but not entirely insincere. Thank you for coming, she murmured. And for helping with the costs. You're welcome. The party itself was lovely. Former colleagues gave touching speeches about Mom's impact on their students. Dad raised a glass in a rare moment of public emotion, his voice cracking as he talked about how proud he was of his wife's dedication to education. Ashley made sure Kevin and I were included in conversations, introducing us to relatives we rarely saw. Then came the moment I'd been both anticipating and dreading. Ashley took the microphone to give her toast, and I felt my entire body tense. Before we continue with the evening, she began, I want to take a moment to acknowledge some people who made tonight possible. Mom, you've touched so many lives throughout your teaching career, and this celebration is a testament to that impact. But getting this party together took a village. She paused, making deliberate eye contact with me across the room. I want to specifically thank my sister, Jenna, and her fiancé, Kevin. Jenna's generosity and support, both financial and emotional, made this evening happen. There were some bumps along the way, and I take full responsibility for those complications. But Jenna showed up anyway, because that's the kind of person she is. So please join me in thanking her." The room erupted in applause. I felt heat rising to my cheeks as people turned to look at me, some smiling, some looking confused about what complications Ashley had referenced. Kevin squeezed my hand under the table. Across the room, I saw Danielle give me a knowing nod. Several of Mom's colleagues who'd likely heard the false narrative were now seeing the truth acknowledged publicly. I noticed a few exchanged glances, probably reassessing what they'd been told. Mom's expression was complicated, embarrassed, grateful, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Pride, maybe? Or regret? After Ashley's speech, several people approached me throughout the evening. Some thanked me directly for my contribution. Others asked tactful questions about the bumps Ashley had mentioned, and I kept my responses brief and diplomatic, just some miscommunication that we worked through. Family stuff. But one conversation stood out. Mrs. Chen, one of Mom's oldest friends from her early teaching days, pulled me aside near the dessert table. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble. "Your mother told me you'd backed out of the party over some petty disagreement about decorations. I repeated that story to at least 3 other people. I'm sorry I didn't verify before gossiping." Her directness caught me off guard. "I appreciate you saying that. Patricia is one of my dearest friends, but she has a blind spot when it comes to taking accountability. Always has. I should have known there was more to the story." Mrs. Chen patted my arm gently. "You handled this with more grace than I would have. Your mother is lucky to have you." The comment stayed with me for the rest of the evening. I'd spent so much of my life trying to earn my family's approval that it hadn't occurred to me to consider whether they'd earned mine. But the moment that struck me most came near the end of the evening. I was standing near the dessert table when Mom approached me alone. She looked tired but happy, her cheeks flushed from wine and attention. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began. "About how I made you feel excluded." I waited, unsure where this was going. "You were right. I did do that. And I've done it before, more times than I probably realize." She twisted her napkin between her hands. "I think I've always been a little intimidated by you, if I'm being honest. You're so self-sufficient, so successful. You built this whole life without needing much from me or your father. Ashley's always needed more guidance, more support. It made me feel useful. With you, I never knew where I fit." The confession surprised me. I'd never considered that Mom's distance might stem from feeling unnecessary rather than from disappointment. "I always needed you," I said quietly. "I just learned to stop showing it because every time I did, you seemed uncomfortable with it." Mom's eyes welled up and she blinked rapidly. "I'm going to try to do better. I can't promise I'll get it right, but I'm going to try. That's all I can ask for." She squeezed my hand briefly before being pulled away by another well-wisher. Kevin found me a few minutes later. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "I actually am." The drive home was quiet. Kevin held my hand across the center console while I processed the evening's events. The relationship with my mother wasn't fixed, probably would never be completely fixed. Too much history stood between us, too many small wounds that had accumulated over decades. But maybe, with time and effort from both sides, we could build something different. Not the perfect mother-daughter relationship I'd wanted as a child, but something honest and functional and real. Ashley texted me the next morning, "Thank you for coming. It meant everything to Mom, even if she didn't say it well. And it meant everything to me." I replied, "Let's have coffee next week. Just us." "I'd like that." Aunt Lorraine called that afternoon, having heard about the party from other relatives. "So you went through with it? Helped them out after everything?" "I did." "Are you happy with your decision?" I thought about Mom's admission, about Ashley's apology, about the small steps toward reconciliation that had happened over the past month. I thought about how easy it would have been to stay angry, to let the resentment calcify into permanent estrangement. "Yeah," I told her. "I think I am. I'm not pretending everything's perfect, and I'm not letting them off the hook for how they treated me. But I'm also not carrying around all that anger anymore. It was too heavy." Aunt Lorraine laughed softly. "You're wiser than I was at your age. Took me 20 years to figure that out." 6 months later, Kevin and I finally set a date for our wedding. When I called Mom to tell her, I braced myself for criticism or lukewarm enthusiasm. Instead, she asked if she could help with the planning, her voice tentative but hopeful. "I'd like that," I told her, meaning it. The venue we chose was outdoors, overlooking a lake, with string lights and wildflowers and all the unconventional touches that Kevin and I loved. Mom gave input on the flowers, and surprisingly, her suggestions were thoughtful and aligned with our vision. Ashley stood beside me as my maid of honor, and in her toast, she talked about sisterhood and second chances. During the reception, Dad pulled me aside. He wasn't a man of many words, but what he said carried weight. I'm proud of you. Not just for this wedding, but for how you handled everything with your mother's party. You were the bigger person when you didn't have to be. Thanks, Dad. I should have said something back then. Should have stood up for you. I'm sorry I didn't. The apology was decades late, but I accepted it anyway. Because that's what moving forward meant, accepting imperfect apologies, acknowledging that people can change even if they don't change completely, and choosing relationship over resentment when the opportunity arises. My family would never be perfect. Mom would probably always favor Ashley to some degree, and Dad would probably always struggle with conflict avoidance. But we were trying, all of us, to do better than we had before. And sometimes trying is enough.